Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our webinar series. It's been a little bit, but I'm glad that we're able to chat again and hear from, all of the folks at home to give you some thoughts about what's coming up for our younger students, freshmen and sophomores, and a little bit of kind of what's on our minds in regards to how we support younger students, and hopefully what should be on students and parents' minds, kind of getting ready for this process. My name's Anthony. I'll be kind of hosting today. Today I have Danny with me. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony. My name is Danny Yu, and I'm an educational consultant with Illumin. And my background is in entrepreneurship, as well as used to be a writing coach for college apps and boarding school apps for a little over 10 years. And yeah, it's great to have everyone here. Nice to meet everyone. And we're excited for a great presentation today.
Perfect. And of course, if you are familiar with our webinars, you know how it works. We'll have a Q&A section at the end. Feel free to put any of your thoughts in the chat section or in the Q&A. It should be in like a little box kind of at the bottom of this webinar if you have it at the default view. And definitely, yeah, just go ahead and put your thoughts there so we can kind of get an understanding of like if there's something we need to clarify later, or we'll definitely come back to it. We try to answer pretty much all the questions we can at the end of the webinar. So. Okay, we'll get started, and Danny will kind of continue or take us kind of down this talk today.
Alrighty, thanks, Anthony. So our agenda for today, we have a presentation that's geared mainly toward our underclassmen, 9th and 10th graders. We're going to be covering how much do colleges care about 9th and 10th grade in terms of academics and activities. What should 9th and 10th graders focus on when it comes to academics and testing? Which activities and involvements, such as volunteering, should I prioritize? What is the most valuable way to spend my summers? And what should I be doing for college apps in general? So the burning question, how much do colleges care about what students do in freshman and sophomore years? So, as our presentation note says, these are really building block years, and colleges do understand that, it's very rare for students to know exactly what they want to do in life or, career-wise, even major going into high school. So freshman and sophomore years, they're looking for active engagement in students' interests. So the next kind of burning question that a lot of families have in mind is what should 9th and 10th graders focus on when it comes to academics? So very important to start off on the right foot. So you'll be, formulating a 4-year plan, looking at course selection for particular interests and potential majors. Of course, keeping the rigor up. So taking honors courses, for example, when they're available, and then making sure you're meeting the school requirements as well as the UC and CSU requirements if you're in California. So just to give you an overview about what the UC A to G requirements are. So for 9th and 10th grades students. So the A to G requirements are the UC's minimum number of classes and credits that students need to fulfill before being eligible to apply to the UC system. So we have another slide down the in a few slides that show exactly what the requirements are, but they're in history, English, math, science, foreign language, visual and performing arts, or VPA, and then electives. And so we wanted to share with you, a couple of example 4-year plans that we help formulate for our students. So the first example we have is for a CS major. So, this particular student was going for a CS major for college. And if you look at for example, 11th and 12th grades, these are very telling. The kind of courses that you're taking, such as AP Calculus BC, AP Physics C, very telling as a CS major. And so my question to the audience might be, in 11th grade, which AP do you think is the least important for a CS major?
Yeah, and I think kind of going along this train of thought, like when working with the consultant, we're always helping students kind of try to balance their coursework and kind of understand. Of course, AP courses are tough, right? And we're helping students kind of get a better understanding of how to stay competitive. I guess, Danny, I also kind of want to toss a thought to you of like, when you're helping students plan these 4-year plans, like how flexible is it? How often are you kind of at the end of 9th grade working with an incoming 10th grader to have them take a look at and try to adjust this? Like what are some of the things that you're working with students here?
Right. So yeah. So being able to adjust and pivot to different course plans is very central to our work. And so oftentimes students maybe they started out as a life sciences pre-med track in 9th grade or coming into 9th grade. And then through the middle of the year, after taking a few classes, online learning maybe, and then joining different clubs, they realize that they're more towards CS, for example. So in that case, we would through our discussions, ongoing meetings, we would sit down with the parents and the students, and then reformulate the 4-year plan so that we can adjust accordingly. So,
yeah. So knowing that, a lot of these 4-year plans are a little bit more flexible, I guess now the question to the audience, if you can put in chat as well, we're looking at 11th grade here. Given that the student is interested in computer science and they're looking at taking AP Computer Science, AP Physics C, AP BC Calculus, which actually for a lot of students is a 12th grade class, AP US History, like what do people think at home is the least important of these APs? And it is a tricky question that can be a little bit confusing because, yeah, it seems like, APs are always important, right? You should try to take more APs, but yeah, I want to get some thoughts at home. I've only seen one answer come in so far, so hopefully not everyone's maybe everyone's also busy and kind of doing other things and listening to us as we talk. Great. So far everyone's saying AP US History. So yeah, you get the kind of idea that we're going with here, right? With this idea of knowing that the student is going to be a CS major, likely needs to prioritize the kind of STEM subjects, physics, calculus, AP, computer science. AP US History tends to be the one that we would probably recommend that students, going to regular US History is not going to be a major change in comparison to, for example, not taking AP Computer Science, right? So I think we have one more profile. Yeah.
We do. So the next profile is the bio major. So another one of our popular majors with many of our students. And so as you look at the 11th and 12th grade course load, you might notice anatomy and physiology and AP Psych. So AP Psych instead of the AP CS for the CS major. But another important thing to note is that, the kind of courses that schools offer are very different depending on the school. So, if in a school that does not offer anatomy and physiology, that's okay. It's okay to drop that one and find an elective that's maybe related as well to your interests. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And I appreciate those at home. People were letting me know chat wasn't working, so hopefully it works now. Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, it was kind of awkward to ask a question when there was no way for people to respond besides the Q&A. So thank you. And I think we'll also we'll try to also kind of give some thoughts as well as we go here, and kind of continuing to think about how critical 11th grade is, and thinking about 9th and 10th grade, of course, are important years as well. But there's a lot of flexibility, right? Moving into and thinking about the specific major of the student. So yeah, and hopefully, I think everyone, you should be able to see also other people's chats if they put it to send it to everyone instead of host the panelists.
So just to just to give you an overview of the exact requirements of the UC and CSU A to G requirements, from history all the way down to the electives. You see the required years, number of years, and then you have the recommended number of years. So thinking back to our CS/engineering student, you of course are going to want to meet the recommended years of math and science, for example. And then if you're a humanities student, history or English, any kind of social studies major, it's a good idea to meet the recommended foreign language requirements as well.
Right. And I think that foreign language one is also one that's also very contentious or confusing. If you, in fact, if you go to the UC's the website that talks about the A through G requirements, and you can just Google this to kind of understand what we're looking at. The recommended quote unquote 3 years is something that a lot of students are confused with. For example, if I test into something like, let's say, AP French, does that only count as 1 year, or does that count as 4, since it would be the 4th in in terms of consecutive classes of French 1, 2, 3 AP, right? For the UCs, they treat that as, they would treat AP French as 4 years, right? Whereas there are some other schools, most notably Heather on our team let us know that a school like Boston University will only treat that as 1 year. So this is something that's also important to know school by school, right? Although we use the A through G requirements as a kind of standard, as a way for a lot of schools will look at it. Of course, each school will have its small adjustments and things like that. There's a question here about what is a college prep elective. Danny, can you kind of elaborate on kind of what it means for 1 year of college prep?
Sure. So the college prep electives, so basically an easy way to think about it is a course that can be categorized in any of the other A to F categories here. After you have fulfilled the 2 years of history, 4 years of English, for example, and down the line, if you take further coursework, then they can count as college, go toward your college prep elective 1 year requirement. And so, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one way to think about this, if you take like an elective business class, usually it would kind of fit in this category, right? So it is a kind of area to say, hey, any other kind of items here. So, and I will, let's see, the other question, I'll go through one more question and we'll save the rest for Q&A at the end, but do most students will typically take only 6 courses? Like, is there ever a situation also where, like, for example, with history, only 2 years are required, but vast majority of students would do all 4 years of kind of history? What would you recommend for students who will, take fewer classes to have that additional or that elective? What would you kind of recommend for students kind of planning their courses there?
Right. So, I think it really depends on the major that the students are going for. So, if you have, let's say, going back to, actually, let's go to maybe an engineering major, right? Maybe a mechanical engineering major. It would be, if you can take maybe engineering, principles of engineering honors, for example, or any kind of, engineering elective. And, after meeting the 2 year history requirement, you could make a case that that might be more, that elective engineering major related elective might be more important. Usually we do like to recommend, exceeding the 2 years of history requirement. So maybe having about, 3 years of social studies and history, and then going for the engineering elective in that case. Right. So
we'll move on. I'll save kind of the other, we'll definitely try to hit all these questions at the end, but I'm seeing them getting more specific about kind of specific courses, but again, we'll come back to this.
And this is a really good resource. So that's open to everyone. So, at the high school articulation site, you can actually search your school, your high school, and it'll show all the course offerings at your high school, divided into by category from A to G requirements. So history, English, math, all the way down to the electives. So you can see which course that your high school offers will apply to which requirements. And so, the advantage of starting your planning early, right, in 9th and 10th grade, is that you're keeping you're making sure you're mapping out the highest priority courses for your major early on, so that you're meeting all the prereqs. For example, taking bio and then chem to meet a physics prereq for like an engineering CS major, for example. And so according to the student's bandwidth, we can actually adjust the prep coursework as well. And then now, into the standardized testing, right? So what should 9th and 10th graders focus on when it comes to testing? Which standardized test should I take? So SAT, ACT, you have the APs too. And then when should you take them?
Another very contentious topic that's coming up.
Right. So, there has been a lot of updates since COVID on the testing landscape. So, colleges, will have individually different policies, regarding, SAT or ACT and test optional. But we still do recommend that all students, take the ACT or SAT, because the data is showing that even test optional colleges, a lot of them are preferring, to see those scores, from students. So, and then also, test optional puts more emphasis on the importance of AP exams, and that's, the AP exams will be largely part of the 4-year planning. Because you simply take them in May at the end of the year after you've taken the AP courses. And we also have a lot of resources that we can recommend to our students to help prepare them for the tests, standardized tests. And so, as many of you might already know, the UCs and CSUs are test blind, which means they will not consider SAT or ACT scores. And I believe this past admission season, you couldn't even put in your SAT or ACT scores in your initial application to the UCs. On the other hand, some of the top schools are back to requiring SAT, requiring scores, standardized test scores. So, you want to be able to check each school's policy.
Yeah, and this is something that's still in flux for a lot of schools, right? There are some schools that have said, we're going to permanently go to test optional. I'll just say, hey, we're test optional for 4 years, starting in 2020, right? Definitely something that we'll continue to monitor as well. So.
And yeah, here, so, we probably, don't need to read off everything here on this slide, but just to show some hard data of colleges showing a clear preference for high standardized test scores. So 76% of admitted students at Penn, 93% of admitted students at Georgetown submitted test scores in the 2020-2021 cycle, which is very clear message.
So, I mean, this is one thing to kind of consider from the perspective of, understanding if, a test score is still important, and this is kind of showing it does, right? But I guess I'll also add one more dimension to this, Danny. If you have a student who is particularly not fond of taking tests, or it's getting close to when they would be applying and they really just don't have the time to study, does this also mean like they're, completely out of luck, or what kind of advice would you give a student like that who's not as interested?
Right. So, this is why case by case is so important, and the context, like you mentioned, Anthony, is so important. So, we do continue to see successful students who have gone test optional. So in this case, in this scenario, we would advise that the priority we would shift priorities to maybe adding another extracurricular, focusing more on academics, and testing might be take a second seat. So
Yeah.
mhm.
And I like how you kind of mentioned that, because again, very rarely are admissions officers going to just look at two test scores or two GPAs side by side like that, right? They are looking at the whole student. And yeah, the additional extracurricular or summer program still can make a difference on an application as well.
Right. And now we're on to which activities, and in extracurricular involvements should 9th and 10th graders prioritize.
Mhm.
So as you look at the list here of various things that students might be able to do as underclassmen to start exploring their passions. I wanted to emphasize that in the early years, it's really breadth over depth. And so, in 9th and 10th grade, you want to explore widely, especially if you're unsure of what major you might want to pursue in college. And then, really explore actively so that you can feel confident about the path forward, so that you can, spend, maybe the second half of 10th grade or in 11th and 12th grades to build depth within your major. So just just to show our families here what the colleges see, so from students, from applicants. So this slide is actually straight from the Common App, the activities list section that that allows for 10 of the students' top activities to be listed, and you see the descriptions and the roles of the students, as well as the time commitments of each activity. So this is kind of an overview of what the colleges will see, and it's very, it makes it very easy to see, okay, what are the major related activities? Okay, so robotics. This student was a mechanical engineering, and so they applied for mechanical engineering first choice, the environmental engineering as second choice. So you can see a lot of community service activities as well, but also some hobbies too. So music, and then a computer technology hobby, modifying keyboards and mice. So you can really see in one look the students, how the student has spent their time. Mm-hmm.
And I think from a perspective also, like from the applicant and the reader's perspective, right, it's very clear the kind of things that are tied to a particular major, as you're saying, like this introduction to mechanical engineering material science class. But it's also, you can also see kind of where the student experimented as well, and where they may have succeeded and where they may have failed, right? Maybe the student was not particularly interested in law and politics, but yeah, being a hobbyist with the modifications of the keyboards and things like that was something he enjoyed, but maybe was not something he wanted to continue with. Similarly with music, it's very clear that this student really kind of developed his skills as a tenor sax player as well, right? Yeah, you get to see a little bit of the story behind the student as well, right? And of course, I think this is why the admissions readers are starting to value or kind of really emphasize the importance of the extracurriculars as well.
Right, and to kind of piggyback off of that, just as a final thought on that slide, so a lot of his hobbies ended up being great material for his college essays too. So another thing to consider as and also to that shows that the early exploration, it really does count. It really does help. So. And now the big question: summer planning. While we're on the topic of extracurriculars, so how do you build your summers? So some few ideas for the summer. So you want to explore various subjects before you get into depth. And for STEM, the preparation starts early. So most competitive, prestigious research programs are for students who are over 16 by the time the programs start. Usually, so a lot of sophomores, so after 10th grade, a lot of students qualified for that. So, in the pre upper class years, you want to, build your resume through your exploration. So it doesn't have to be a formal program. It could be online classes on Coursera, for example, or competitions, for example, or volunteering. So, or pre-college program. So there's various ways to have items on your resume to be ready to apply to those prestigious programs as an upperclassman.
Right. And again, like these research programs, some of them are really hard to get into. And of course, having that set up prior is going to be really valuable.
Right. And so, and going on the topic of summer projects. So, a lot of our students like to engage in passion projects where they kind of get to set the tone and be creative and be involved in their potential majors in their fields in a very personally meaningful way. So I think what I wanted to point out here is that the difference between starter projects and advanced projects, right? So starter projects are, you can see that they're more geared toward learning and kind of practicing in your field, and whereas advanced projects pivot to applying your knowledge and your skills for the greater good. Whether it's helping younger kids, learn how to program, or starting a nonprofit or community service to impact your community in a positive way. So yeah, so just like Anthony and I have been mentioned a few slides back, colleges, when they look at your body of work, your activities, they're interested in learning more about you, what passions you have, and it could be oftentimes it's in major, sometimes it's not necessarily connected to your major, but adds color, a lot of color to your application. So it's definitely okay to try things out, and then it's a lot. Oftentimes, some of the non-resume items that students often think aren't resume worthy sometimes become really good college essay topics to show other facets of yourself. So for college prep, so in terms of being identifying which colleges you might want to pursue, right? So what would we recommend that you do to prepare? And so in our mentorship advisory sessions, for example, we would actually do exercises with our students to help them explore some great resources online, for example. So Niche, Big Future, Road Trip Nation, very, very, insider kind of information about the colleges. So, a lot of times there's testimonials from students who are actually, current students at the university, and they're very, very honest. So, they can be very good resources. And then, Campus Reel, UVisit, these are great resources when you're not able to necessarily visit. Kind of, if you're thinking about like a East Coast or Midwest, kind of far away campus, you can kind of get a feel of the campus life that way. So, but we definitely recommend that you contact the schools, and when you can, and before you go to visit them. Try to register for the formal, for the official college tours, and that way you can show demonstrated interest in the college ahead of time. Right, so so save yourself from the why didn't I write that down phase. So as you're doing the college research, maybe make a list, maybe a spreadsheet, to to collect your thoughts on each visit, each college preference. Great source of motivation, and also starting your resume now. So we actually as soon as we start working with even ninth grade students, we start drafting their resume, and then their Common App college app activities list, the descriptions that we went over a few slides back. We actually start working with them so that they can feel comfortable, kind of it's like self-bragging, right? Which isn't always easy. It comes, it's hard for adults too, which is why college essays tend to be so difficult at first. So same thing with the activities descriptions. So we guide students early on to get a knack of that. So.
Sorry, I was muted. But some thoughts in particular, this one for Columbia, read books and digest culture. Columbia directly asks you, like, what have you recently read? Or tell me about, your favorite album or music that you enjoy. So this is also kind of something that is key. So keep in mind, like, yeah, what are you reading for leisure compared to things that are required by your school as well? So. And we will kind of start, of course, we do have a few questions already, but of course we do have offer free consultations for a lot of our students who are, starting this process, trying to get an idea of what it might be like to work with a consultant, right? Definitely, you can also indicate in this poll right here as well, but feel free, you can also scan the QR code, let us know online. We'll leave this there. But we can go ahead and start the Q&As again. Feel free, drop your questions in the Q&A section in the chat. We'll go through again as much as we can. And we've got almost 30 minutes to go through everything. So definitely we left a lot of time here. Let's see. We have a lot of questions around APs first. So I think we're going to center there to begin with. There's some questions between BC Calc and AB Calc. I guess, Danny, do you want to kind of give a overview or a thought of of course, just a quick preface, but in general, BC Calc is the one that is more difficult. I think typically aim for in 12th grade to either take AB Calc, BC Calc, or for some schools, it will be AB in 11th grade, then BC in 12th grade, right? Is there one in particular that students should be aiming for, Danny?
Right. So, that brings us back to the major. It really depends on the student's major. So if you're going for, math heavy majors, like any of the engineering majors, CS, a lot of, competitive colleges like to see BC, at least through BC Calc by the end of senior year, if not even sooner in 11th grade. And so we do see, some students, who are able to complete BC Calc by 11th grade, either go AP Stat in senior year, or even actually go to multivariable calculus at a community college, for example, for senior year to show their aptitude. So, and then, you would compare to that for maybe a life science major or humanities major. Colleges won't be expecting non-engineering, non-CS major to, complete, BC Calc. So AB Calc would actually be very high on the, on the accomplishment for the expectation for the non-engineering majors.
Yeah, perfect. And so there's a question here that says, I heard you could take BC Calc without taking AB. You can get credit for both. Is that true? I think it's going to depend per school, just depending on if they treat AB as part of it. But Danny, do you have kind of a thought there?
Yes, yeah, it is kind of tricky. So, my understanding is that, it does depend on the school's curriculum. So, recently, actually, we were touching up on the 4-year plan for underclassmen, and the question came up. And so at the student's particular school, it was a pre-calc honors. And then once you take pre-calc honors or accelerated pre-calc, then you could either go to AB or BC. So, the path is, depends on the school, what the school allows you to do.
Sounds good. Let's see. Let's talk about AP languages next, because I'm seeing that come up. Question of what would you recommend for students who have exceeded their language options at their school? So the example here is AP French was already completed by the end of junior year. Kind of any next thoughts about what the student should be looking at?
Right. So, once you've, completed AP French, was it French, Anthony?
French, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, once you've completed AP level in your language, then, maybe senior year, it's okay to, maybe take an extra elective toward your major. So, I'm not sure if the person who asked the question, did they mention the student's major or?
No, they didn't.
So it would really depend on the major. So it can that's great. You've already exceeded the requirements. For pretty much all the schools. So I think 12th grade is when you can take that interesting elective that you've always wanted to take. So yeah.
Let me add a twist here. What if the student does want to study French and is already at that high level? Like, are there any kind of particular extracurriculars or kind of recommendations and thoughts for a student?
That's a great question. So that's really interesting. So we have actually had students in similar situations before, and they can do a passion project, for example, right? So we've had students write books, like for example, write a novel in their second language. So we had a student. We actually have a student working on a German novel, and looking to publish that through Amazon, and then getting really and perhaps donating hard copies to local libraries and charity senior centers. And so really creating a meaningful extracurricular activity using their talent. There, I believe for French, there are, competitions. So, for most of the foreign languages, there are competitions that you can, compete in to show your, just how you show your aptitude that way as well. So.
And then is another related kind of language question, is it okay to take a class such as languages outside of the high school and have it not be part of a school transcript? I think this is very common with, for example, after school Chinese schools. I know this was like a big topic when I went to Chinese school back in the day, of like, hey, can I count that as credit for something? Danny, your thoughts there?
Right, and absolutely. So that's definitely an option. And even if the class wouldn't be part of your, even if it's not part of your high school transcript, you can still, either add it to your activities list, so as an activity item, or if it's from a community college or a college, for example, then you can have your transcript from that course only still sent to the colleges you're applying to. So
there are definitely ways around it. You don't necessarily, if you really want to take Latin and your school doesn't offer it, I think definitely ways around it. So
right.
And then the question of also, will colleges take into account if a school does not have any honors classes or AP classes?
Absolutely. So you really, when with college admissions, colleges tend to really assess the students compared to other students at that particular school. So definitely, that will definitely be taken into account. So, they won't be, comparing apples to oranges. So they won't be, comparing a student who goes to a school that, allows them to take maybe, 13, APs by the time they graduate, to a student where maybe only, 5 APs are more realistic with their offerings. So. Yeah.
And this is true for a lot of kind of side questions. If you get the question of also like, hey, I'm a 9th grader and a 10th grader, my school doesn't let me take APs, right? it's the same logic here. The school admissions officers will understand your local context and understand that rule is in place by the school district or the high school, and they don't have that expectation for you to take AP classes at the 9th or 10th grader, right? So definitely understanding that the term that admissions officers will always kind of go back to is evaluating in the local context, right?
Right.
Yeah, so another question about languages. Let me go back to that slide because it is such about A through G requirements.
Oh, yeah.
This way we can look at the actual numbers also, and it can be, yeah, here we go. Required compared to recommended, right? The question here is, you know, what is the recommendation for languages? It seems like UC says 2, but they hear students doing 4 years for students interested in STEM, right? I guess, Danny, do you have any thoughts there?
Right. So, you know, what they're probably referring to are, maybe top 20 colleges, right? Like rankings. So when you're looking at, top 20 colleges or, UCLA, UC Berkeley, so colleges that are extremely competitive to get into, a lot of times, its admissions has gotten so competitive. It's actually, a lot of students max out their course rigor in almost every subject they take, even if it's not, in their major. So yeah, so going back to, the STEM student doing all 4 years of foreign language, that's a primary example of that. So
yeah, I would say the phrasing of this, I believe everyone can see the phrasing of this question in the Q&A. I just said that so we could answer this live. But again, this thought of 4 years for a STEM student, I think it seems counterintuitive. It's like, if you're not going to study French, why'd you take French for 4 years, right? Or were you like super passionate about French? But again, it's thought of, for a lot of STEM majors, potentially might be a little bit more competitive if you're aiming for really hard to get into schools, recognizing that a lot of those students are maxing out on all the resources that they have, right? And one of the resources is going to happen to be foreign languages, which, students may go up to 4 years instead of just stopping at 2, right? I think there still is an argument though, if like, hey, I'm particularly fond of studying math or applied math, and I took 2 years of French and I'm done with it, I don't really like it that much, there is the argument to also potentially really double down on the extracurriculars for math, right? So it's not to say that you must do 4 years of it, right? But I think it is important that you have this evaluation instead of thinking like, oh, I hear people take 4 years of it, let's just take 4 years of it, right?
Right, prioritizing your extracurriculars and balancing, extracurriculars with academic rigor. Right?
And a lot of these simple questions of, is it 4 years here or 2 years here? It's much more complicated than that, right? It's, again, the comparison's never, oh, is the 4 really that much better than the 3, that much better than the 2? It's all the other things you could have done with your time also, which is, much harder, much longer discussion, right? Let's see. Oh, good question here. What if I want to major in humanities but minor in a STEM subject or finance? How would you recommend prioritizing classes or APs? This student says they're on track to do BC Calc by senior year without skipping anything over the summer.
So majoring in humanities but minoring in somewhere in STEM.
Yeah, it looks like it, and then I think the students also adding context that like they're currently thinking about majoring in something like psychology, sociology, interest in law school, wants to consider also kind of a minor in STEM. I think, the critical part is the minor. How important is the minor when you're thinking about course selection here?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. Really interesting question. So minor, usually, you don't have to worry about course, when you're selecting your high school courses, you usually don't have to take into consideration your minor for college. You can really, you can assume that you'll be building around your major for college, because that's what the colleges will be evaluating your application for that major. And then once you get, at the college that you end up attending, it's very, very, simple to minor in just about any, subject. So,
Yeah, I think the easy quote unquote answer here is typically you can add your minor after you get to the college, and vast majority of schools will let you minor in whatever you want, right? There's very few, unless you're like at a very specialized, like really competitive like the like management and technology program at like UPenn, or all of these like really, harder programs that seem to put two fields together, right? In that case, definitely, I think you'd want to have this discussion simply because the major is a lot more difficult to get into. But yeah, if you have a curiosity for something else, a major really is just a set of classes that you have taken, and a minor is just a set of classes that you have taken also, right? You can always just add those classes typically, right? Unless the school, for certain schools, it'll just be this thought of like, hey, CS is really competitive. Sorry, you might have to be on the wait list for classes for if you want to do a CS minor, right? But at that point, it becomes more of a college list selection question rather than a, hey, did I pick the right minor or the right pathway there, right? Of thinking like how feasible it is to go in that direction. So well, hopefully we kind of discuss that a bit more. So yeah, thank you for sending so many questions. Give me a moment. I'm trying to get things organized as well and try to theme the questions when possible. This is a good question. Okay. Long story short, a student is, generally good in all subjects, gets straight A's, still doesn't know what they really want to study in terms of, going to college, slight interest in data science because, but I guess it's also this thought of not completely sure about the industry or doesn't understand it. And maybe they also are considered about, or they're also trying to add this additional factor of career and income later on. How would you kind of advise a student to kind of think about majors, pathways, things like that, if they're also kind of thinking about like future career prospects or things like that? So
right.
That,
Right, definitely. So, one of the, things we do when we onboard, underclassmen, one of the first things we do is a major career profiler test. It's about, it's a 10 to 15 minute test, multiple choice, very easy to take. And it asks about the students' preferences in a working environment, their strengths, what makes them curious and, excited learning. So, what fields and what kind of learning they like. And it comes back with dozens of actual potential career fits. So we actually, that's actually a very helpful point of starting our discussion to identify, what are some real careers out there that interest you. And, once the student identifies a few, then we look into majors and colleges, right? What majors feed into those careers that you're interested in, and which colleges are strong in those majors. So, that the second part would be the major college exploration exercise that we do with all of our underclassmen. And so, oftentimes that really helps, clarify a lot of the questions about pay, about the work-life balance, so types of work out there, how to make an impact in that career. So quite recently, I had a similar situation where a student, all A student, straight A's coming into high school, their passions were, it really ran the gamut. So, art, architecture, game development, so computer game development, English writing. And so part of our, discussions were to do the, profiler tests and college major exercises, but also getting a little bit creative and looking at Indeed job posts, for example, to see real live job posts out there, and as well as recommending summer programs and online learning opportunities that can be easily done like over a weekend, for example. And this student, ended up, doing a program over winter break in AI and machine learning. Fell in love with the, with data science and machine learning AI, and now feels very confident about, pursuing, CS and data science and related majors. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely, being able to look at Indeed and kind of figure out what are folks hiring for, these days. So good question here. I think also a little bit more, I don't know, vague is the right word here, but also kind of a little bit more broad, perhaps, kind of thinking like, how would a student know what they want to major in? Are there any things that you would particularly advise students, like in terms of like how they would evaluate it for themselves?
Right. That's a really good question. So, it kind of goes back to the major in college, research exercise that we do with students, because, most students, most of us, when we think of majors, we don't know exactly what the requirements are. Once the student goes to the college, and what kind of courses will they be taking. So we actually walk through the students to research each, a handful of colleges of their interest that are strong in their majors of interest, and actually write down and examine what the curriculum is, what the required courses are. And it's incredible how informative that is for the student, because not only do you see the course titles that are required for a particular major, you can see the course descriptions. So what will you be learning? And that really helps gauge the student's interest. So, when you're looking at the course descriptions and titles, if it seems boring, that's not a good sign, right? That's a sign that, okay, maybe you need to move onward to another major. But if it looks really exciting, that you can have confidence that that might be the right major.
Yeah. Kind of almost like breaking up the major into its composite parts of like which classes, right? And I think there's always that unassuming class that maybe you'll love as well when you go and take that. My favorite class was a class called Real Options. Really weird, unassuming name, but it had to do with like options trading and kind of managing. It was super cool, but again, it's like real options. I don't know what that is, right? It's hard to evaluate sometimes, but at least you get a kind of general idea of what's coming your way. So couple more, I think we only have a couple more minutes, and I think we'll try to let's see, I'm trying to we can discuss this one, but I guess the question is centered specifically around biotechnology, but I think this is a good one also for majors where it might be harder for students to find extracurriculars for. So maybe something like, I don't know, microbiology or civil engineering, things like that. Like, how would you recommend a student get their hands on research experience, or like just something for their resume when it is a little bit more harder, or it's for students that might be a little bit older? Like, what would you recommend as a first step for students with that interest?
Right. So, a really good first step, sort of the low hanging fruit, online courses, so great way to start. So whether it's biotech or environmental science or environmental engineering, if you go to Coursera, for example, you can actually search for those different majors and topics, and you'll see dozens, sometimes hundreds of, free courses that you can take, that take maybe, some courses take 1 to 4 hours to complete, so very easy. Some courses are longer, maybe a few weeks to complete like a certification. And so once you have that, then we would look at different programs that maybe aren't don't require kind of jumping through hoops, so to speak, like don't require too many essays or teacher requirements, more accessible intro level programs. Then that would be the next step after independent learning. And then once you have, so it's like a snowball. So you're really building your your resume to be able to apply to the more competitive programs. Yeah.
And I think the important part of this context also, like if when we think of like online classes, a lot of folks just think like, oh, like, but you're doing it for nothing. And it's like, well, the point of the online class is not to get credit. It is just, let's test if this is something like you're actually interested in, right? Can you sit and do a 4 to 6 hour course and really work through it and really be interested in it? Or, you know, is that something that's just going to go in one year, come out the other, and then maybe, you know, that's not your major, or not, you're not that interested, right? Like even knowing that that's not your major is still valuable, especially for younger students, right? That are, you know, don't have something click as quickly, right? It's still kind of an indicator that can be helpful, right? Let's see. A question about applying for multiple or different majors for different schools by the time you're in 12th grade. I guess it's a thought of thinking like, you know, what is, I'm also trying to parse this question a bit more. It looks like this student has an interest in like political science and economics, which, you know, are close enough. I think that like a lot of your extracurriculars might overlap, but let's say there's a student with like, I don't know, like anthropology and astrophysics, like two completely opposite end activities, like, well, or like interest in majors, like how would you recommend a student build their course selection, their extracurriculars, kind of thinking with that in mind of, hey, I think it's one of these two, but they're really far apart.
Right. So, you know, if it's, so, you know, we would tend to encourage selecting one option so that you can, so that it's a little bit easier for the student to build depth in that potential major. But there are cases where the student really can't decide, right? It's really 50-50. They love both and they want to explore in college. And that would be, you know, in that case, that would be the undeclared option, which is, you know, also there. So, you know, we, when a student is thinking about undeclared, because they have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 different passions, then what we would discuss would be, you know, what, coming to, you know, brainstorming what kind of, you know, career achievements, right? What kind of impact the student might want to make on the world, kind of in general. And then how will these different passions, how might they fit in to the impact they might want to make in the world? And the reason why we start brainstorming, you know, this question is because of the essay. So, you know, a lot of colleges will be asking the why major essay. Why do you want to major in this, you know, in the one you selected? And so it's going to be the same with undeclared, you know, so, you know, you're going to want to, you know, explain how, you know, your various passions might be applied toward a certain goal that you might have in life. So,
and of course, it's no easy question to answer when it's like problems you want to solve that will impact this world, right? Which is like, it seems far-fetched, but again, it's like being able, you don't literally need to go do them right now, but being able to articulate that is something that will, one, hopefully help you kind of understand your interests a little more, but also two, you know, when it comes to the essays and that you really need to explain that you'll have a chance to really discuss that. So, we are out of time for today, but again, I'm back here because definitely, please, you can if you want to continue the conversation or you have additional questions, we're happy to chat some more. We do have our free consultations, and definitely, yeah, happy to chat with everyone here if you're interested or have some additional thoughts about specific majors, specific interests, or extracurriculars. Right? We will be back next week. We'll be doing a webinar. I think I've got webinar next Tuesday, same time, and the Tuesday after. We'll be kind of discussing as well. Next week, we'll talk about GPA and other kind of admission factors with Dana. The week after, we'll be giving a timeline for 12th graders ready to, or rising 12th graders getting ready to tackle that admissions process. So definitely stay tuned. You'll get the, of course, the kind of signups in your email as well. So you'll definitely just stay tuned for that. So, okay. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And yes, of course, there's a real recording on our website, probably over the weekend, but we'll upload that as soon as possible. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.